Hello, Chuck here, and welcome to another video about some more of my favorite stories about Robert Guthrie. This is the second video I've made about Robert Guthrie stories so far. I think I may make at least one more. And I'm making these because, unfortunately, he has just passed away. So I made a list of stories that I wanted to remember and that I wanted to share in case you find them interesting as well. And then I had come up with a lot of stories, so I kind of categorized them so that, I don't know, that just seemed to make a little bit more sense. So in the first video I talked about stories about him doing amazing things with the guitar. So I'll link that in the description below. Along with a playlist of all of his recordings, if you want to listen to those, which I would certainly recommend it. In that first video, we talked about some crazy scale stories, some crazy concert stories, some crazy recording stories. So, yeah, good times there. In this one, I want to talk about some things that he personally did for me. Because he did a lot of things for a lot of people, and I want to share those types of things because they were really amazing things, and they were really life-changing. So that's what these stories are going to be about. I have 5 more, and then I think I'm going to make one more video at least, in which I'm going to talk about stories involving his teaching. Things that he taught, or things that I saw him do, just kind of the example that he was, because I think that might be the most important stuff of all. So I'm kind of saving it for the end. But once again, we have a listener with us. Here's Chappie. Say hi, Chappie. He's going to try and do a better job than he did last time, he says. And we have another listener over here. That's Veronica. Say hi. Yeah. So, we'll see if they can listen to the stories today. But, don't get your hopes up. Okay, so I have 5 more. The first one, let's see. Okay, it involves the first time I ever met Mr. Guthrie. So, I was finishing up my undergraduate degree at North Texas. And I was looking for a master's program. I had plans to audition for, I think, 3 different programs, just because you never know if you're going to get in, and you want as many options as you can, and to meet teachers and whatever, stuff like that. And a teacher I had at the time recommended Mr. Guthrie to me. He's the one that told me about him, and he said I would definitely audition for his program. This guy's really amazing. So, what happened was actually my girlfriend at the time, which I ended up marrying, and we were married for a while. We're no longer married, but I guess I told her about it, and I told her mom about it. Her mom was a violin teacher and a professional musician for many, many years. So her mom actually took the initiative to reach out to Mr. Guthrie and just say, hey, I'm so-and-so, I'm a teacher in Dallas, and, my daughter's boyfriend is a classical guitarist, would you be willing to meet him, and I'll even offer to pay for a lesson for him with you, which was really nice and generous. So he wrote her back, and he said, thanks so much, and he said, I'd be happy to meet this young man, and he said, just consider it a professional courtesy, you don't have to pay me, which was really nice. So I went to have a lesson with him before the audition times. And I remember, finding the building, brand new campus, so I had to find where the arts building is, find the music section of it, and then his office was like in the basement. There's a whole level down there in the basement. It's where the practice rooms are too. It's like a dungeon. So I had to go down and find his room, and then I remember walking up to his door, and he was in there practicing scales. And I remember 2 things. 1, his sound was huge, and 2, he was playing them fast. And when I I guess I didn't even know what he looked like, because when I heard his sound, I just thought of this like huge Spanish guy. Okay? Because that's what he sounded like. So I like knock on the door, and then he opens, and there's this like tiny old white man. And I was like, who are you? Where's the big guy that was playing fast scales? But of course it was him. So I played for him, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 pieces, something like that. And, you know, at the time, I'm not going to like rag on myself, but at the time I just really didn't know what was going on. I mean, I'd done some good work and I'd had some good teachers, but I wasn't as interested as I like thought I was, you know. So I don't think I was really doing anything interesting. But he gave me a lesson right then, and he started to help me with things and just kind of said, you know, look, this is what I would think about, and it was really great. So then he said, well, definitely sign up for an audition and then come back and play for me just to officially do it. Because he said, he made it sound like I would have a shot to go there, that he might accept me. And I said, okay. And I said, well, you know, I'm going to audition at a few other places. So, you know, here's these other programs I'm thinking about. And I said, you know, I think I want to come here. But I said, is there anywhere else that you might recommend just in case it doesn't work out? Or is there anyone that you just think I need to for sure meet because they're a good teacher or something like that? And so he said, well, and he mentioned the people I had told him I was going to audition for, and he just said nice things about them, very professional things, and they're good teachers and players and all this kind of stuff. But then he goes, but don't go there, I want you to go here. And when he said that, it just kind of made me be like, whoa, like, really? Are you serious? But that's what he said. And looking back at my time with him, one of the most important things he did for me was build self-confidence. You know, I am someone who has just had to do a lot of work in that area. And he was really amazing at that. He definitely helped me so much with that. And I saw him help all kinds of people with that. And I also think you can't help someone build self-confidence if you don't have any. So he not only knew how to do it, he knew how to do it right. And he knew how to not get confused on things that we might get confused about. Being young people, trying to find your way and trying to build confidence in these types of things. So when I look back, I think it started that first day I met him when he told me that. And I had such a low opinion of myself, just in general, but also as a guitar player, that I was shocked when he said that to me. But it started a long, gradual, but a definite process of me building self-confidence and taking myself seriously as a musician. Because if you're going to work with him, he's kind of not going to have it any other way. You're going to bring your A game, and you're going to show up, and you're going to learn to do the things that you need to do. So one of the things I'll always be grateful for to him is helping me develop my self-confidence and doing it in a healthy way. And it started the first day that I met him when he said that. So, long story short, I didn't end up auditioning at any of those other places I was planning to. I auditioned for him. He said he'd love to have me. And, you know, eventually I got my letters from the school and I was able to go there for my master's. So, that's the first thing I wanted to mention that he did for me. And it was the first time I ever met him. That's when it started. So the second story, let's see. Okay, is a second story has a very different tone. Okay, So, like, when you work with someone like a teacher, okay, there has to be a level of trust, right? And I think as a teacher, you want to come from a place of love, basically. That's basically the place that you want to come from. That's the place that I want to come from. And I feel like Mr. Guthrie was definitely that way. That being said, love is not all the time warm and fuzzy and feel good and you're doing great and fluffy mumpkin things. It's not that all the time. It's like that sometimes. Sometimes it's discipline. Sometimes it's accountability. Sometimes it's tough love, okay? So then as a teacher, it's like you just really have to do your best to pick your spots. You know, when isn't one of these times? Because you want to help the person. And you got to make sure that it's not just you getting angry or me. I have problems with getting angry, so I have to make sure it's not just me getting angry. It's not me having my feelings hurt. It's not me being frustrated. None of those things I need to let happen. It's kind of a delicate process, okay? It's tricky. So the story I want to talk about now is one where he just brought the hammer down on me. And it was definitely a tough love moment. So, but I'm talking about things that he did for me that I'm grateful for. And this one is not an exception. Okay, so I had been there almost 2 semesters. And he liked his students to do one recital every semester, okay? And with the scheduling, if it wasn't like a degree recital where you were playing for like a panel of teachers and they gave you an actual grade, you had to get your recital in if it was in the spring before spring break, so that those degree recital people could basically wait longer and practice more and have the later dates, which makes sense, you know. So it was my second semester, it was that spring semester, and I did my recital right before spring break. So I asked to meet with him like during an extra time that wasn't my lesson because I wanted to hear his feedback on it, and I didn't want to wait a whole week and then both of us kind of do a lot of other things and then come back and talk about it then, right? I wanted to talk about it when it was fresh on our minds, and I didn't want to wait a week. So I asked him if I could come by for an extra time, and he said, well, yeah, you know, I've got these 30 minutes before we go to ensemble rehearsal. Why don't you come by then? Now, during this time in my life, with guitar, I was more so going through the motions. You know, I was doing some good work, but I just didn't really get that if you want to be certain ways, you just have to be certain ways. You can't just say, oh, I'm going to play a certain way because it's a recital and I want to do great. Like, it didn't work that way. Like, you have to do those things all the time. You have to learn to be that way. Like, you have to learn to not be able to be that way. But I didn't understand that. So what I would do is I would play a recital. I would be pretty happy with it. And then I had this routine of always taking a week off from guitar. Just like as a reward and a break, and I would, do other things and no guitar for a week, okay? So I was used to meeting with my teacher and them saying, great job, things are going great, keep going. We might, focus on this and that and maybe a little critique, whatever. That's what I was used to. That's what always happened. So I thought that's what was going to happen. I was having those feel-good vibes. I've been working hard the whole semester, gave a good performance, played my best. He's going to be really, really happy, right? So I go in, and immediately I notice he's not in a good mood. It's like one of the few times when I could visibly tell he was not in a bad mood. I mean, he was in a bad mood. He was not in a good mood. So immediately he goes, well, you're the one that wanted to meet, so what do you want to talk about? And I was like, well, I want to talk about my recital and things that went well and things I need to work on and stuff. And he said, okay. Now, I don't remember this, but I bet he probably said some nice things first because he always did that. I don't remember him saying any nice things though. Here's what I do remember. Him saying, okay, well, you started with these pieces. In these types of pieces with this time period of music, you have to do this and you have to do this and you have to do this. You never did any of those things during any of these pieces. Then you played these other pieces. In these pieces, you did this and you did this. You can never do that with these types of pieces. Then and he went piece by piece through my whole program and he ripped it to shreds in that manner. You have to do these things. You never did them. You did these things. You can never do these things here. Piece by piece. And I was just sitting there like this, thinking, oh, I thought it was good. So he rips it apart for the better part of 30 minutes. And then he looks at the clock and goes, well, I bet you'd like to have something to say in response, but we got to go to ensemble rehearsal now. So I didn't get to say anything in response. We go to ensemble rehearsal, and for the whole hour and a half, I was constantly screwing things up. I mean, I could not play a right note. All this stuff was swimming in my head, and I felt like a failure, and I was so mad. I was so mad at him. But he didn't say a single word to me during ensemble rehearsal. Like in terms of, Chuck, will you play your part? Or why are you playing wrong notes? He didn't. I feel like he knew exactly what was going on. That he had just ripped apart my whole recital, and I was having kind of a hard time dealing with it. So he was going to give me a pass for that day, which I appreciate. And it was just one of those tough love moments. And I was so mad at him for weeks after that. I just thought, this is not fair. I played good. Things are going well. Why would he be so hard on me? And it took me weeks to settle down enough to finally think, well, what if he was right? And then I finally started to see, okay, there are different types of things I need to be doing. There are different types of things that I need to be working on. And I need to set some way different goals. So I remember that point in my life as a drastic change of path. Like I was going like this, and I went like this. And I started to do things very differently. And I never looked back to this way. I haven't looked back since. I don't really want anything to do with that stuff anymore. I wanted to do with the new stuff that he was leading me towards. And I did not take a week off. That tradition of taking a week off after recital, that ended right then. Because I thought, I was just so upset. I just had to get back to work. So once I calmed down, it really started to sink in, and it really changed the way I approached the guitar. And I think it was a big step in terms of me learning to listen to him, because it took me about a year to a year and a half to begin to actually listen to him. And then the last part of the story is the next time I did a recital, so it would have been the following fall. I was ready. I was ready for the whipping. So like, I meet with him, and mentally I was just like, give it to me. Just bring it on. Like, I want to hear your worst, and I'm not going to be mad. I can handle it. Just give it to me. And he said nothing but nice things. I mean, just, oh, this is going well. Did a great job. He was in a very good mood that day. So I was just like, okay, I was all kinds of prepared for the worst. But anyway, that's the second story. The third story, let's see, is something he did for me that I'll always be grateful for. So I did a master's degree with him. It's a 2-year degree. And then they don't do doctorate degrees there at SMU for the arts or for music, as far as I know. So they let them do what's called the Performer's Diploma, which is just a performance-based degree. It was a 2-year degree at the time. And it's not a substitute for a doctorate, but it's just something that I think a lot of schools that don't offer a doctorate, they offer something like a Performer's Diploma or Artist Diploma, so you can get another degree there, which is cool. So naturally, I wanted to do the Performer's Diploma. I wanted to keep studying with him. I wanted to stay in the program. I had a great group of people in the program. It was a mix of like some of us that had been there a few years, some people that were coming in that were new but doing great. So of course, I applied for the Performer's Diploma. And I did my application, and I immediately got a response from the music office saying that I was not accepted. Immediately. And I just thought, it was frustrating. So the next day I went to school, and I went by his office, and I just said, hey, I just need to let you know something. And he was in there playing, and I remember he was playing, and he said, what? And I said, well, you know, I applied for the Performance Diploma, but they didn't accept me. So I just need to let you know. And I remember he was playing, and when I said that, he went like this. He just stopped, and he just slumped over. And I said, I know. I said, I'm really upset. I said, but I still want to take lessons with you, like on the side. I mean, I want to keep doing work together. I'm just bummed that I can't be in the program. And I said, you know, maybe next year I can apply again. And he just said, well, let me see if there's anything I can do. And that's all he said. That's all he said. So I didn't really think much of it. It didn't really sound like he was going to be able to do a whole lot. And the next day, I got 2 emails from the music office. One saying that I was accepted to the Performer's Diploma program. The second one saying that they gave me a full scholarship for it. So this is the kind of respect that he commanded. I don't know who he talked to, but he just made it happen. Like on that day. And the next day, like early in the morning, they sent me those emails. So, absolutely amazing. I was so happy, so thrilled. I got to do the Performer's Diploma. It was great. I got to be in the program 2 more years. Got to learn so much. I was just really figuring out how to listen to him. And that just carried over throughout that whole time. So I just got so much benefit out of being able to do that degree. Not because the degree is worth anything, because the time with him was worth everything. And just being in his program, getting to do all of the work. So definitely a very big thing that he did for me personally. That just brought so much benefit. And I'm very grateful for him. So the fourth story, it happened maybe just like a couple of years ago. This was after I had graduated from SMU. I'd gotten my master's and the Performance Diploma there, and there wasn't anything left for me to take. But I would still go by and see him from time to time. Like every once in a while. I'd email him and we'd set up a time, and I'd go by his studio and play something for him. We talk about guitar. And we actually ended up talking about all kinds of things. And when I would leave, he would always say this, and he said it to everybody, all of his students. He would always say, come by anytime. So in me, you know, I've been for most of my life like a pretty big negative thinker. So, and I was going through a time where I was really trying to break away from that. And I remember my natural instinct when he said that, I would think, he doesn't really mean that. Like, I don't want to bother him. So he's just being polite. So I can't really come by anytime. But then one of these days I heard it, and it did hit me. You know, he wasn't going to be around forever. And I said, you know what? I'm going to take him up on that. I'm going to come by anytime. And then if he ever tells me to leave or go away or stop coming by, then I will. But, like, this is what he says. He says, come by anytime. I want to test him on it. And I wouldn't just show up. I would email him. But I would say, hey, do you have any free time like this Saturday? Because Saturdays were usually good days for both of us. So I started to go by sometimes every week. But at least a few times a month. And sure enough, if he could schedule me in, he'd say, come on by. I'd play for him. You know, we talk about guitars, we talk about players, we talk about strings, you know, we talk about arranging and composing, talk about some football for sure if it was football season, just all kind of stuff. And I just had so much fun with him. So one day, you know, it was typical. I'd emailed him and he said, you know, come by, you know, can you come by at 11? So I said, yeah, sure. So I show up at 11, go in. I think I'd played for him some stuff. We talked about strings probably. We always talked about strings. I remember him showing me some YouTube videos because he liked to do that. He'd be like, oh, you know, I found this Sabicus video. It's great. Or, you know, he'd ask me, have you ever heard of some, you know, famous harpsichord player? And I would say, no, I haven't. And he would say, oh my God. So he'd be like, let's go look at some videos or whatever. So I think we watched some videos. And I remember getting the feel of like, I've been here several hours. So I might have been here like 3 hours. But we were just having fun. Like one thing led to the next. I remember that neither of us ate or drank anything during that time. And also neither of us left to go to the bathroom. It's weird. I know, right? So finally he says, well, you know, I better mosey on because, you know, I bet my wife is probably wondering where I am. So I said, okay, you know, well, great to see you. And, you know, I'll talk to you soon or whatever. And I left. And I got in my car. And the clock, I'll never forget, said 5:59. And I did the math, and I said, okay, 11, 12, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Wait, 11, 12, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then 5:59, almost 6. Okay, 7 hours. I had been in there 7 hours. It was the 7 hour lesson that I call it. And I just couldn't believe it. It just blew my mind. And you know, they say time flies when you're having fun and all that. Yeah, I wouldn't have guessed I'd been in there half that long. But it was just one of the best days of my life. Absolutely. And, you know, he didn't charge me for it. He didn't even charge. At that time, I could not pay him. The last time I tried to pay him for a lesson, I had already had several with him when I was not in his program. And he just said, no. And finally, I was just like, just let me pay you for one. And I got cash and I brought it with me. And I was like, I'm just going to put this on your desk and I'm just going to forget it when I leave. And then you do with it what you want. And he was just like, oh no. And I was packing up my guitar and he took it and then he put it back on my chair. Like he just wouldn't have it. And finally I realized, like, I'm going to make him feel worse if I make him take my money. Like he'll feel better if I don't pay him. So I stopped trying to pay him after that. And I just accepted, well, if he wants me to pay him, he'll ask. Or if he doesn't want me to come by, or if he can't or whatever, he'll tell me. But just 7 hours I got to spend with him, like all day long, and one of the best days of my life. So it was really, really a great gift. that he gave me on that day. Okay, so that's 4 stories. The last one, what's the last one? Oh, right. So I'd made a list, and on this one I put in quotations, "Keep your RN hot." Okay, that's the title for this one. So when I started the Performer's Diploma, they have a little bit different recital requirements. For the Masters, you can just do all solo recitals if you want, which is what I did. For the Performer's Diploma, you have to play some of them. There has to be an element of chamber music, so it can really be anything, but you have to play with at least one other person for some of the recitals. So one of the ways you can do that is to do a concerto, and then you play with the pianist who plays the orchestra part. So I went that route, and I was talking to him when I started the PD. I was talking to him about concertos and what to learn, and he was saying, well, these Vivaldi concertos are nice, and he said the Ponce concerto is really nice, and he said the Villalobos concerto is nice. But then he said, but then there's the Aranjuez, and he said, none of those really compare to the Aranjuez. It's the best one. The Concerto de Aranjuez. But he always called it the Aranjuez Concerto. That's how he always referred to it, the Aranjuez Concerto. So I told him, I said, well, do you think I'm ready? Because I don't feel like it. And he just said, you're ready. You're ready. So that semester, I just took his word for it. And I learned the second movement, which is definitely the easiest movement. It has its difficulties, but it's by far not as difficult as the outer movements. And then I got to play it at the end of the semester. The next semester I learned the third movement, which I would say is the second easiest, but a lot more difficult. Played both of those. Played with an accompanist that screwed up at the recital, but I'm not going to talk about that right now. Made it through. And then I had the whole summer to learn the first movement, which I think is the most difficult, and I needed the whole summer. So then at the end of that next fall, I got to play the whole thing. So after that, we were talking about the recital, and he said there's one main piece of advice I can give you about this piece now that you know it and you've performed it. He said, keep it hot, because you never know when you'll get the opportunity to play it on short notice. Okay? Some foreshadowing is happening. So he told me that, and I thought, okay. And I thought, well, I was thinking, how? Someone's going to call you and say, can you play the Aranjuez Concerto? I mean, next Friday at 8 p.m., whatever. It's a pretty weird request to make. And I did get the chance to play with an orchestra after that, which was really cool and awesome. That was also one of the best nights of my life. But after that, eventually I let the piece go. Because you know how it is when you're trying to learn lots of new music, you let pieces go. It happens. You lose other pieces. You can't keep everything. So eventually I let it go. And it's one of those pieces I thought, one day I want to come back to it. I want to relearn it. I want to redo my fingerings and because your technique changes over time and things like that. So I want to come back to the piece. Well, I never had for several years. And then it was just a few months ago. He passed away. So he had passed away, and it had been several days, and I hadn't heard anything about funeral details or anything like that. Then I remember I was going on a walk around the neighborhood, and I get a text from his wife. And she sends me she's like, here's the funeral. It's going to be this coming Friday, and here's the address. And then she says, will you play the Adagio from the Aranjuez Concerto? the second movement. And my first thought was just, oh my God, yes, I will. And I just was just unbelievably honored to be asked. Just what an opportunity. So of course I will. That was my first thought. My second thought was, oh my God, I really wish I would have taken his advice to keep the Allred West Concerto hot, because I didn't. And what do you know? I am being asked to play it on short notice. I had 6 days until I had to play it. Now, it was just the second movement. It was not the whole thing. If it was the whole thing, I would have had to say, I had to play it super slow and use the music. But the second movement, it was doable. I just kind of had to put everything else aside. I didn't play anything else for those 6 days. I warmed up and I started to work on the piece. And there were really only 3 passages that I was worried about, and they're the passages where there are 2 or 3 voices going on. And I went to those first thing. I just wanted to get those in my muscle memory and knock them out as soon as I could. Then I just kind of took a different section each day, and it came back to me. And then I got to play it at his funeral. And I worked very hard. I did a lot of praying. I wanted to play the piece really well, only because I knew that's what he would have done. I knew I'd be dealing with emotions. I knew it would be not close to an ideal playing environment. I looked at the weather. It was supposed to be in the 50s and windy. I knew I wouldn't have a chance to warm up. So all those things happened, and I was not surprised by any of them, because I knew that was going to happen. But I told myself, if he were in your shoes, he would still play his very best. It wouldn't matter that he wasn't warmed up. It wouldn't matter that he was emotional. It's what he would do. So you need to do it too. And you can do it too, is what I told myself. And that's why I worked really hard on it, and why I wanted to play it as well as I could. And I also did a lot of praying that I would have the right mindset, that I wouldn't be focused on things that I didn't need to be focused on, that I would be focused on making music to the best of my ability and playing it really for him. And when I played it, I was sitting right in front of his casket, but he wasn't in there. I could have played it for him anywhere in the world, and he would have heard it. That's just where we happened to be. So I was conscious of the fact all week that I was playing it for him, and that he was hearing me practice it. And I would think about his advice to me, and I would just laugh, because I would think, it's like you tried to tell me. You're going to have to play this on short notice, so don't forget it. And I didn't take his advice. It would have been not quite as difficult if I would have. But, so what I'm doing now, so I relearn the second movement. I play it through from time to time so I don't forget it. And now I'm also relearning the rest of it too. So now I am taking his advice. So if and when I ever get asked to play the Allred West Concerto on short notice, I want the answer to be, oh yeah, I can play it. And I want it to be pretty close to just being in my fingers. And I'm realizing right away, the technical demands of this piece, if this is something to just have around, man, your technique got to be in fantastic shape. And he would talk about that too. One time he said, if your repertoire can keep you in shape technically, then that's a great place to be. And then he said, I was asking well, what kind of pieces? And he kind of mentioned, well, maybe this or that. But then he said, I can't imagine anything better for your technique than playing the Allred West Concerto. So I'm trying to reap the benefits of that. And I'm rediscovering these. So I'm starting with the first movement again. And I'm rediscovering all these difficulties about it. Definitely a lot of challenges. But that wraps up the last story. Just that nugget of advice that I didn't take, but I'm taking now. So that concludes the stories in this video. Like I said, I have plans to make at least one more that will deal with, stories about his teaching and about his example. So thanks so much for listening. I know this is a long video, but if you stuck it out, then I really admire you. But no, really though, I admire your attention span. It's not an easy thing to find these days. So thanks so much for listening, and take care and have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.
Are you awake? Did you fall asleep during the stories? Good morning. You missed the stories. You fell asleep. I thought you were going to try and stay awake. You didn't. You fell asleep.